bit late. If you are just chiming in, do me a favor and put "I'm here" in the chat. Cherie, we get ready to go in, babe.
Yep. Good morning, guys. Good morning.
And I just wanted everybody to just jump in. If you're jumping in for the very first time, put "first time." I got to go and grab the what do you call it? The thing that we use to be able just to watch people come in.
I don't know.
The iPad. Hey.
Hey, guys.
Good morning.
Come on in the room. You'll see our lovely faces in just a moment. We're trying to get last minute things in order. If you are new to our channel, welcome. Welcome to Breakfast with the Brooks. If you are not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, please subscribe. And also ring the bell so that you'll get future notifications when we go live and also when we post new videos in the room. Thanks again for joining us this morning.
We are excited that you guys are here.
It is a lovely, lovely Saturday morning.
Beautiful Saturday morning. Do me a favor, guys. Chime in. Let us know, what city are you representing? What city are you chiming in from? We recognize, obviously, that YouTube reaches all around the world. Sorry about that, babe. Reaches all around the world. And we want to know, what city are you representing? Appreciate you guys for putting that in chat. Again, for those of you guys that are just jumping in, we're going to get started here in a quick second. My name's Glenn P. Brooks Jr. Sitting here next to me is the lovely Cherie Brooks Jr. You guys will be able to see our faces in just you see our faces in just a moment. Also, do me a huge favor, guys. I want you to share this out to as many people as you possibly can. Because today, if you are single, if you are engaged, or if you are dating, we are going to help you. Daniela, good to see you. Nikkei, good to see you.
Largo, Maryland.
Largo representing in the building.
Nikkei.
Dana is in the building.
Dana. Morning, Sidna. Hey, Sharon. If I don't miss anybody, good morning, guys.
Good morning, guys.
Please be sure to share this out to your friends and your family. DC in the house.
DC in the building.
The original Chocolate City.
Wow. Why you got to go the original chocolate?
Because I'm an original native of Washington, D.C. before they changed it.
Y'all hear how she just went up on another level?
I'm from the original Chocolate City.
Wow. Well, here we go. Miss Chocolate City, who's not as chocolate as I am. I'm from the Charm City. 45 minutes to the north. Baltimore represent.
Yeah, we ain't messing with Baltimore Banners.
Look, why we got to be Baltimore Banners?
Because that's what we called y'all back in the day.
Wow.
But it's cool. I love you.
God bless America and nobody else. For those of you guys that are just jumping in, super excited to have you guys here on Breakfast with the Brookses. What's up, babe? We're going to get into some things today, and we got some content for them today because yesterday was a bit of I wouldn't call it a bad day, but you and I had an experience last night, and we kind of got into a little bit of a funk.
Good morning, Randall.
And I don't think that people think that we go through. I don't think that people think that we don't have problems. I don't know why I get the feeling that some people think that our situation, they the coaches, they don't go through. It's like, yeah, whatever.
I had to put out an SOS last night to my girlfriend.
You get what I'm saying? Because she's about this. And look, the SOS was, you better come get this Negro. Because if you don't, I'm going to hurt him. I know was that the SOS, right? No. Yes.
It wasn't that.
I felt like that.
I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
But we keeping it all the way real.
We're keeping it all the way 100.
We are not perfect.
We are not at all.
We have our issues. We
Absolutely.
have our challenges. But we learn from them. And we, unfortunately, but fortunately for you guys, share that all with you.
So listen, we're going to go live on Instagram. If you are not following us on Instagram, we're on Instagram at Breakfast with the Brookses. It's all spelled out, all one word, Breakfast with the Brookses. We encourage you to please to follow us on Instagram. We're going to go connect with our Instagram community so that we can get this party started. Great morning, Instagram. Good to see you. Welcome to Breakfast with the Brookses. We're super excited. Today we're going to finish what we started last week. Last week we started a series called it's two-parter really. It's not a super series, but definitely a two-parter. The 9 steps in order to be able to highly effectively communicate. If you're single, I want you to put a 1 in the chat. Whether you are on Instagram or you are on YouTube Live. If you're single, put a 1 in the chat. If you are dating, put a 2 in the chat. If you are engaged, put a 3 in the chat. Hey, Ebony, good to see you, sis. Good to see you. Welcome to Breakfast with the Brookses. Guys, do me a favor, share this out. For IG, y'all need to share it out by going to the little arrow at the bottom of your screen. YouTube, you know what to do. Y'all do me a favor, share this out to as many people as you can. And baby, we're going to go into it today. So I'm talking about the component, the one core component, I think, babe, that really makes or breaks any relationship. And we talked about it last week. We're going to recap just a little bit for those people who maybe didn't get a chance to catch us last week. But we're not going to spend a ton of time there because I really want to get into the balance of it just because of how deep things are. But the statistics are in. The statistics are in. 40 some odd percent of first marriages end in divorce. 50 some odd percent of second marriages end in divorce. And upwards of 60, almost 70% of third marriages are ending in divorce. And here's what I'm going to promise you guys as relationship coaches and people who have been married before. I was married twice.
You were married once.
I was married once. Cherie was married twice. And we understand what it looks like. But what they're saying, babe, is that the number one reason why people are getting divorced is because of the lack of communication.
Right. Communication is the foundation of any healthy relationship. So people will sometimes say, well, we got divorced because of infidelity or we got divorced because of money. No, at the root of that is communication, because if you were able to talk about the issues that led to infidelity, or if you were able to talk about the issues that led to your disconnect as far as money, then you would not have gotten to where you got to. But because people don't communicate, people don't talk.
Correct.
To each other, they talk at each other, then it creates problems. And so you have to learn the skill set of being able to communicate with your spouse. And so for my singles, my people who are dating, my people who are engaged, if you can master the skill, and when I say master, it's an ever-growing process. You continue to grow in
right.
it. But if you can get a hold of it, if you can get a real understanding of how you communicate and how your significant other communicates,
it'll change the game.
It will change the game, and it will help you to be able to take your relationships to another level. For those of you that are currently single, if you can learn this about yourself now and learn the signs to be able to identify another person's communication style, when you do get in a relationship with them, you'll know how to communicate with them so that they can understand you.
Right.
I think the key, what happens a lot of times, we just talk.
Yeah.
And assume that the person hears us.
So we went through that last night, and we had to practice this stuff last night. We may get a chance to get into some of it as an example, because I don't care how long you've known each other. I don't care how long you stay together. This is one of those things that never goes away. Like I've never heard a person that say, you know what, I've mastered knowing how to go up the steps. And so now we don't need the steps anymore. Let's just rip them out. Let's just rip the steps out of the house.
Or I can
let's
go up
not
the steps
use
with
them.
my eyes closed.
Or I could no. Let's just rip them completely out, because I can jump from one level to the next without using the steps. I can just do what I got to do. That never happens.
No.
That never happens. Why? Because
Superman can do that.
Well, most people ain't Superman. So the truth of the matter is that unless you have some superhuman ability to navigate from one level to another, you're going to need steps to get there. And that's what communication is like. Those are the steps to be able to connect to one another.
Right. I agree.
So today we're going to drill down on the back half of the 9 steps that you need to know in order to be able to be a highly effective communicator. Let me just say this off the break, guys, so that you guys are super clear. Communication involves both transmitting and receiving. And oftentimes we get really, really busy about transmitting. We can say we said it. We can say we had the conversation. We can say, but I know that he heard me, per se. But oftentimes the transmission was never received. I am one that does not trust technology like that. When I text you, I don't assume you got the text until you reply.
Right.
I just don't. I could, if somebody say what, but if I say I text you and you never receive it, then you're not going to reply. But if you got it and you didn't reply, I don't know that you receive it. So I could assume you did, but here's what I know. Most often, if I'm assuming, it puts me in a place of where things can go wrong. There are a ton of reasons why you may not have received a text. Your phone could have died. You could be in a bad area. You could be in a building that gets no signal.
You can have your phone with you.
You could have your phone not with you, meaning it's on, everything is fine, but it's in your purse and that's in your car. And you're out and about or doing whatever. So I'm not going to assume. That's why when I do talk to you, I'm not going to say, why didn't you hit me back? I'm going to say, did you get my text? because I want to know first, before we even have this conversation, did you receive my last transmission?
Right.
And when we begin to sort of, I think, kind of close the gap on that kind of stuff, guys, that's when we find out really quickly if the message is both being transmitted and received. So if you're ready for this content, put ready in the chat. If you're ready for this content, they got a whole bunch of ones.
What was the one?
The ones was for if they were single.
If they were single.
Look at all them ones.
Okay.
Them are all our single people.
Single
Speaking
people.
of which, while we got them in there real quick, guys, this coming October the 11th and 12th, I'm going to put the website up real quick for those of you guys on YouTube. www.thecrcoach.com.
Well, I was going to put the link in the chat.
Okay, well, we can do that as well. Cherie's going to put a link in the chat because what we've decided to do is we had an offer, a special offer for an event, a conference that we're doing, and we really want to extend it to our YouTube family and our IG family. I'm not so sure that you guys got in on this because I think we gave the offer after the call last week. It was on Monday nights live that we did for that workshop, for that webinar. So what we're doing is that we're in October 11th and 12th. It's called The Road to I Do. The goal is to be able to do an event. We're calling it a premarital coaching intensive.
Right.
And the reason why is because if you are single and you have any aspirations of getting married, if you are dating and you are aspiring or you're moving towards marriage, if you are engaged and we know you get married because you got a ring on it, you feel me? You got a date set. There probably is a deposit on the dress. I'm going to ask you to pump the brakes for a hot second and come to this workshop, particularly if you're in the Hampton Roads area. If you know any single people, you need to let them know because, Cherie, we're going to be drilling down on all of the key components that it takes to make a marriage last forever.
Right.
Too many people are getting into marriages and they're coming unglued, not because they don't love each other. I need y'all to hear this. It's because they don't have the skills to grow the relationship. And so we're going to be drilling down on things that people generally don't talk about. They generally don't get an understanding of. I know for you and I, when we came together, we were blending a family off the break. One of the things that threw me for a loop is 12 years into the marriage, Justin, probably about 10 years into the marriage, I guess it was. Yeah, it was at least 10. Mm-hmm. Justin came to live with us full time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we never talked about what that could look like.
No,
let's not deal with the math. Let's not go there. I just want to stay on the point.
Right. He came
because you went into your turtle
right.
thinking.
Sorry.
That's okay. Right. But the point I'm making is we never had the conversation.
Right. I knew you had a son.
Correct.
I was involved in Justin's life. He would come and stay with us every other weekend. He came for the summers. He came for holidays.
We had a great life.
I had a relationship with him. We were cool. We were fine. But we had never really discussed whether or not one day he would come live with us full time, even though you had shared that was the desire of yours. But up until that point, his mother had been saying no. And so I had dismissed that would ever happen.
So
I didn't give it much thought. And so when the time came for him to come, I was like,
Right. I don't know how I feel about that.
Him come stay like permanently.
And then, your breaks made me feel like, well, wait a minute. Well, what's the problem with my son?
Right. And it wasn't even about him. It was about...
Y'all, it got funky real quick.
Right. It was more so about us because of our lack of communication in certain areas at that time. And my thing was that I did not want to become a single parent again.
And you got to explain that because the truth of the matter is that I was extremely driven at that time. I was in ministry. We were building a brand new, it was a startup church, really, for all intents and purposes. It was a church in Georgia. We had just planted this church and we were growing it, and it was a lot of work, and I was never home. Right. And one of the things Cherie's concern was, I don't want to have to be fine myself raising Justin by myself. If he is going to be raised by me, why would he come here?
Right. Because at that point, our daughter was in college. She was in Maryland. She was in college. So we were empty nesters. We had gone through the years raising her, finished raising her. She had gone off to college. We moved to Georgia. It's just the two of us. And so my thought was that, okay, his mother's having challenges with him. She's a single parent at that point in time. I was like, him coming to stay with me he's going to go switch from having one single parent mother to another single parent mother because you were not home, because you had gotten accustomed to it just being us. and you were so driven with work, you were never home, and I was like, that's got to cease. We got to make some changes if he's going to come here.
So we said all of that to say that we did not have that conversation on the front end. You know what I'm saying, Jay? And I know that, having a lot of kids, it becomes something that you need to discuss. Mm-hmm. When you have children, either different ages, particularly in our case, they were 8 years apart. So we experienced that whole empty nester thing. It sure would have been nice to have that conversation on the front end, at least to how we felt, because we went through, it was a couple of weeks before you could really wrap your head around this idea. I found myself selling you on the idea. You found yourself saying, back up off me. It's not that I don't love your son. Our son, that's not it. I'm feeling bad. I'm having to communicate. It was just a mess. Mm-hmm. And what I want to encourage you guys is that if you guys don't navigate it, so at this workshop, we said all of that to say that at this workshop, we're going to drill down on how to navigate those kinds of conversations. It's going to be live. It's going to be hugely interactive. Friday night, when you come, the road to I Do, that Friday night, we're going to do a meet and greet. We're going to hang out socially just to get to know one another. Downtown Norfolk is probably where we're going to be, the Waterside District. Just super excited about the opportunity. So if you know anybody who needs to take advantage of this, today we're going to be extending an offer that we originally was going to cut off yesterday. But instead of it being $150 per person, we are making it now $99 per person. And we're going to extend that offer specifically to you guys here in our YouTube audience, our IG audience. If you know anybody in and around the Hampton Roads area that needs this, go to the crcoach.com.
Also, you can go to the link. For those of you on YouTube, I've posted it in the feed. I posted a direct link for the registration if you want to just go ahead and register. And as Glenn said, we're extending the early bird rate of $99 until the end of this month, to September 30th.
Yep.
So we're extending that until the 30th for those of you in this community that are viewing this, so that you can still register.
Absolutely.
For the event. Now, know that there are only a few spaces left.
Yeah, this is not going to be a huge thing. It's not going to be a
big thing because we want this to stay intimate. We're only allowing so many people so that we can have real interaction with you guys. So if you are interested, go ahead and register. Secure your space before the spaces are gone.
Yep. Okay, great. So we got all that stuff out of the way. Let's drill down. Let's get into some of this great content. 9 steps to highly effective communication. Number 1, we said last week, was you need to learn how to stop and listen.
Right.
Stop and listen. It's pretty self-explanatory, but here's the challenge. Most people are so busy about their own agenda that they don't know how to just put the brakes on and really tune in to what the person is saying. So number 1 is stop and listen.
Right. So being able to stop in the moment and actually hear what it is that the person is saying, instead of letting your mind keep going and you coming up with a response, but actually stop yourself and actually listen to what's being said.
So number 2, if you're ready for number 2, put number 2 in the chat. One of the things I do want to say for stop and listen, baby, is that when I value you, I will stop. Mm-hmm. Let me say that again. When I value who it is that I'm talking to, or I value the relationship that's involved, there has to be a level of emotional awareness that comes in the room that causes me to say, you know what? I value you too much to keep going. Last night we had a bit of a challenge. You were trying to communicate something. I wasn't quite getting it. But then I realized that I said, no, what? We need to stop right now. I need to stop because at this particular point, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And then I still didn't really get it all the way together until later that evening. But that began the process of me even being able to hear you, which brings us to number 2. You have to force yourself to hear. Mm-hmm. I want y'all to write that down. Force yourself to hear. Mm-hmm. When you get to the place where you're forcing yourself to hear, you're going from just listening to making sure you heard what was being said.
Right. And so that's where, trying to make sure I don't go ahead. You want to make sure that you're really hearing what they're saying. So you may restate what it is that you said so that you understand clearly what it is that the person's saying. But you have to put certain things in practice so that you're making sure that you're hearing, that you're not allowing yourself to be distracted. You're not allowing it basically to go in one ear and out of the other. One thing I think that's key in communication is that we have to understand each other's threshold when it comes to communication.
That's good.
Some people can only take, and there are studies out to say that men and women can only receive so many words a day. But I want to even go beyond that. I think it's an individual thing, because depending on where that person is emotionally, what they're going through, their threshold for taking in information is affected by that. And so you have to be very conscious, very, very aware of where the person you're communicating is, so that you make sure you don't overwhelm them. You don't just dump and they're not receiving.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Some of that threshold is also dictated by their temperament.
Right.
Generally speaking, a lion temperament, or a high D, if you've ever taken the DISC assessment, that person has a very small threshold or window for words.
Right.
And the reason why is because they are results driven. So the more you talk to a lion, oftentimes the less they are hearing you.
Right. And the same for a chameleon. If a chameleon is frustrated because they're results oriented as well, they at a point they're going to glass over.
Well, it's actually the turtle.
Or the turtle.
The turtle is the one that's results oriented, and that's the cousin to the lion. The turtle is just introverted. The lion is extroverted. Right. And so I just need you guys to understand that if you're dealing with a person who has that kind of temperament, you'll find it really, really nerve-wracking to some degree, that especially if you're a flamingo temperament like me, or a chameleon temperament like Cherie, where they tend to be more feeling oriented, they're more relationship oriented, they will have a tendency to want to continue to talk. And to share and to make sure that they are understood. Right. Well, that frustrates the you-know-what out of a lion, and it will cause a turtle to shut down and not want to communicate with you. Right. If you are a person and maybe you're like, what is he talking about? Like, what are these animals? I don't get that. Do me a favor, go to our website, www.thecrcoach.com. You can find information on how you can take that assessment and figure out where you are. I think that's a game changer for people in relationships, babe, to understand what they're dealing with. So when we start talking about forcing yourself to hear, I realize that there's only a certain amount of words you can take.
Right.
Your turtle will not allow me to flamingo you out and flood you with words, because at that particular point, and we did that last night. We'll get to talk a little bit about last night and how we navigated around it. But that's where we were. Number 3, if you're ready for number 3, put number 3 in the chat. Great to see everybody chiming in. I appreciate your interaction. Absolutely. Information thresholds. I love it, Sidney. That's exactly right. I want you guys to understand that when you have a disregard for someone's threshold and you continue to push past it, here's what I'm going to tell you. You deserve what you get. If I keep pushing, and Cherie has said, listen, I'm done. I can't take any more information, and I keep talking, I deserve what comes after that. Because what I've done is I've disregarded her threshold.
Right. And oftentimes, like I said, for a turtle temperament like myself, I'm a turtle and a chameleon, because I have the emotional side, but then I also have the logical side, the analytical side. When I'm frustrated, the two will clash. Yeah. And it'll cause me to shut down. I just don't want to hear anymore.
Yeah, she does things like this, like, and that's when I know, boy, you better, it's time, Jay, it's time for you to exit stage left. It's about to be a situation you need to get out the room. You get what I'm saying? You need to come in a little bit, babe, so IG can see you. They probably think you're trying to hide from them.
I'm not hiding.
But the point I'm making is, guys, is that those are things you need to do. So number 3, we got number 3 in the chat. Be open and honest with your partner. So we're talking about the 9 things to highly effective communication. Last week we did 1 through 5, I think it was. We're just recapping last week. Number 3 is to be open and honest with your partner.
And that goes without saying. Be open and honest. Do not keep secrets. Do not let the person know where you are. If you're having a bad day, if you're emotional, if you're not feeling good, you need to let the person that you're in a relationship know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't know by osmosis.
Yeah, and that's the other part. I think that a lot of times people, especially when you've been in a relationship for a long period of time, there's a lot of assumption that goes on. You should know by now. You should know this about me, or you should know that this is how I feel. No, I shouldn't. And the reason why is because if you don't tell me where you are, I'm not going to assume that that's where you are today. I could fill in the blanks, but I want you to be open and honest with where you are. I want you to be open and honest with how you're feeling. I need you to be open and honest about the facts in the situation, what's really going on. There's a ton of things that open and honest has to apply to if my communication with you is going to be solid. I cannot have an agenda.
Right.
I can't have this little axe that I'm grinding on the low and you don't know it, but I'm trying to get you to move in such a way. That's not cool. And it will not allow you to grow in your communication.
Right. And that actually goes to number 4. Number 4 is pay attention to nonverbal signs. Although you're to be open and honest with your partner, it's also imperative, it's each of your responsibility to pay attention to those nonverbal signs. Because a person, their body language, certain things are going to give you warning signs that something's going on. And you have to be aware of that. I think in today's age, particularly because we're constantly distracted by so many things, it's very easy to be having a conversation with a person and not really be looking at them.
Right.
You're not paying attention to their body language. You're not paying attention to certain things because you're so distracted by other things. And so when you have a conversation with a person, have the conversation with them. Be present. Be in the moment. Pay attention to their body language. Pay attention to any nonverbal signals. You know, when you're talking to your child, you're having a conversation with your child. If they're looking away, they're not looking at you, there's something causing them not to want to look at you. So you got to figure out, so what's going on? They're embarrassed. They're concerned about something. Those are signals that will tell you certain things. But if you don't pay attention to that, because you're having drive-by conversations, which is something that I stress all the time to people, do not have drive-by conversations. And what I mean by that is I'm walking out the house and I'm going to have a conversation with you as I'm walking out the house, but I don't stop to have the conversation. I'm moving. And,
right.
And I'm just, hey, da-da-da-da-da-da, and expect you to have received that.
Right.
That's not fair to you because we haven't had eye contact. I don't know that you really have heard me.
Yep.
I don't know that you understood what I said, but I'll come back with the wrath of, oh, you didn't do what I asked you to do.
Right. And that happens with children and parents all the time. What we see as coaches is that you're trying to figure out why there's a disconnect and your kid is giving you clues. They're giving you clues. What's going on, Chip? Good to see you chiming in, brother. Appreciate you being there on IG. They will give you clues as to why they are disconnected. The problem is that if you don't pay attention to their nonverbal signals, then you will never pick up on those clues, and thus you'll keep pushing. You'll cross the threshold of how much they can handle. Then that produces in your children tears, in your spouse words, probably curse ones. God bless America. And if they really love Jesus, they start quoting scriptures. You get what I'm saying? And so you're trying to figure out, oh Lord, I done messed up. And the truth is because you've crossed that threshold.
Right. And just want to touch on this real quick. And this, like Glenn said, this really happens more so with parents and their children. We were talking last night, and you used the example of, your child comes home and they're high. But because you're not accustomed to having conversations with them face to face, you notice something a little off. But you don't sit down or you don't talk directly to them enough to really pick up on the signs.
Right.
Of what's really going on with them.
Which makes that difficult, especially if you're a person that never experimented with drugs, so you don't know what high looks like for real. Well, you could tell something ain't right.
Right.
You can tell something's off.
But if
you might not know what to call it, but if you stop and you pay attention,
you would notice that something's wrong. But what happens, is we have these drive-by conversations with our kids. They come in late. They come in whatever from hanging out with their friends. It's like, hey, how you doing? No, hey, come in the room. So how was your day?
Yep.
Sit down for a second. What's going on? So what did y'all do today?
Yeah.
What did y'all do today?
Right.
Tell me about your day.
Yeah, this
okay?
This also happens with little teeny children whose attention spans are darting. Our grandchildren are a great example of that.
Teach your children to look you in the face when you have conversations with them.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next one because you getting ready to go. Yeah, you getting ready to go ham on that situation. I just realized. Number 5. Are you ready for number 5? Hey, look. I know it's been 20 years in a row. I know my wife, so it's time to move on. Number 5. Put number 5 if you're ready for number 5 in the chat, babe. This one is a big one because, and we talked about, for those of you guys who are just jumping in, we're talking about the 9 steps to highly effective communication. Cherie and I, having been married prior to one another, can promise you that the demise of our previous marriages all involved and evolved around non-communication skills and not having them developed. And I am convinced that this is the one skill set in a marriage that when it's developed and it's healthy, there's a direct correlation on the relationship. But when it's underdeveloped and it's not healthy, again, there's a direct correlation on how well this relationship grows. And unfortunately, it really pays some really, really negative dividends if it's not done correctly. Number 5, stay focused in the here and now. Why are you shaking your head, babe?
Don't whip out the list.
What list?
The list.
Child.
Because remember 4 years ago when this happened, you did this. And remember
Right.
6 months ago.
Because you always and you never.
You never. Nobody always and never's anything.
Come on now. So when we say stay focused.
Do not.
Go ahead.
Eliminate those words from your vocabulary.
Please.
Eliminate the words always and eliminate
keep
the
you in
words
trouble.
never from your vocabulary. Because no one always... The only person who always does anything is God.
Right. Nobody is that consistent.
None of us are that consistent in anything.
Right. So
because we're human.
So when you say
there's room for error.
When you say that you always cut me off,
that means we never have a conversation that I don't cut you off.
Not one.
Never, not once.
Ever?
I haven't not cut you off.
That means if I say something like you never consider me.
You never ever. What? If you've never done that, why am I with you?
Y'all hear how that goes? And so here's the challenge. I'm going to give y'all a tip. When you use words like always and never, what's going to happen is you're going to make something peripheral the point.
Right.
Not the issue. And so you never get resolution. Y'all need to hear me. Please listen to me very carefully. Singles, dating, and engage. Almost 100% of the time, when you find yourself in a place where you are associating everything that a person does with always or never, one of the things that I'm going to promise you is that you're not going to give room for change.
Right.
You're not going to give this person the opportunity to do something different because in your mind you've already associated that with they'll never make that adjustment. They'll never change.
Right.
And so if you're not careful, how many of y'all have ever been in a relationship where a person has a particular viewpoint and you stop trying because your thought is they're not going to change their mind no way. Like, why have this conversation? Because I know they're not going to change their mind. That's an always or never mindset. When I approach Cherie that way, I don't give her the benefit of the doubt of being human and for this being a new day. Right. And a new opportunity. And maybe she will. So what will happen is that I will find myself always dealing with things in the past or the future. Right. Not the now.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. And it causes you to not, you're not giving them any credit for when they have done it right. So, whatever efforts they have made in that area, you're now discounting that.
Right.
So this may be an area that's been a challenge in your relationship and they've been working on it and they have made some strides. But when you come back and be like, well, you never do this or you always do this, you now have discounted whatever efforts they have made, which makes them feel defeated. And they're like, well, what's the purpose of me even working on this? Because you're not recognizing the good that I am doing.
100%.
And so it's self-defeating. It's self-sabotaging the relationship when you constantly use the terms always and never.
So, number 6, we're going to start on the back half. We've got 9 things that we're talking about. If this is helping you, put yes in the chat. If this is helping you at all, I just like to know that there's dialogue, guys. I like to practice good, healthy communication. And one of the disadvantages of us to you is that we can't physically see you. And so I have to guess that you're there. I have to guess, are you connecting? Does this make sense? So that's why we ask you to chime in. That's why we ask you to engage the process, because I like to know that you're there. And those of y'all who know me as a coach, I'm very strategic. And I don't assume that you know anything if you don't tell me and give me feedback. So give us some feedback. Let us know how this is helping, if this makes sense, both on IG, YouTube. If you have any questions, we'll try and get to some questions before the day is over, and we're going to help you. But number 6, if you're ready for number 6, put number 6 in the chat. Babe, I think that number 6 is one of the big ones where it gets people off course. And we've been talking about this lately in our coaching. By the way, guys, we have 5 different group coaching environments online that we do in the MAPS community. And we just got finished launching a new series that we've been doing. If you desired ever to come into our community, now would be the good time to do it, because we're starting a new series that's dealing with what we're going to talk about right here in number 6. So I got a bunch of yeses in the chat. Great. Glad to know that we're connecting the dots for you guys. I'm glad to know that it's helping you. Number 6, here's what I want you guys to understand. You have to try to minimize emotion when talking about important and big decisions. Mm-hmm. And notice the word try in there, because most people don't do this well. Most people lead and are led by their emotions. Okay? And the reason why arguments, or what could have just been a discussion, what could have just been a healthy dialogue, a debate even, what could be a disagreement that doesn't go wrong, often escalates into the place of full-blown arguments, full-blown fighting, people sleeping on couches, folks getting put out, stuff. If you're really high-strung, you're throwing stuff out the window, right? You're lighting dumpsters on fire with people's stuff because you're slashing tires. I bust the windows out your car. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're doing all of that because your emotions are leading you. Right. And here's the problem. When you don't have a good, healthy grip on your emotions oftentimes will cloud the room, because, and let me say it this way. When it clouds the room, it fogs up the room, what it does is it hides the issue. Right. Does that make sense, babe?
Right. And so what I always, try to encourage ladies to do is have the conversation before the conversation. And what I mean by that, so if I'm upset about something, I'm frustrated, I'm bothered, I'm angry, I need to call a trusted friend, somebody that got some sense, that ain't going to amp me up.
Let's underscore that one. Somebody's got some sense.
That's not going to amp me up. Somebody that's going to let me vent.
You are not calling the one to say, girl, where you at?
We need to cut him.
We need to cut him.
No,
let's get him.
Don't call that one. You want to call somebody that's going to talk you off the ledge.
That's probably not your mama.
Right. You need to call somebody that's going to bring you off the ledge.
Right, because your mama going to side with your mama going to be like, look, let me tell you something. Right. Now, some of y'all got mothers like mine that will tell you the truth regardless. Right. But you got to have a trusted friend. I'm sorry.
Right. I mean, so you need to call somebody that's going to talk you off the ledge, that's going to help you to think logically about the situation, to bring you back down, to bring you down off your emotions. So you have that conversation first to calm yourself down. Go for a walk, go do something. Get your emotions in check first before you have the conversation. Get yourself so you're not coming in heated when you have the conversation. Because what happens when you come in, walking in with that emotion, all it's going to take is for them to say one thing. You waiting for the match to be lit at that point. Yep. And so it's going to go from this, I like to say, a $5 issue to now it's this $5 million issue, because they done said something and now it's done sparked something and now your emotions in it.
100%.
And you're crying and you cussing and this is when the always and the nevers come into play, because your emotions have this whole thing has blown up into something big. And it could be a major issue, but it doesn't have to be that venomous of a conversation. Right, exactly.
So I want you guys to try to do that. One of the ways that we can do that and help you guys do that in our Relationship Academy, we're talking about emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. And you've all heard of IQ. That's your intelligence quotient. EQ is your emotional quotient. And what that does is, if you could just think of it really quickly, is that your IQ is your ability to navigate things based on data, based on information, based on, drilling down on specific things. EQ has everything to do with how you feel. Mm-hmm. And so depending on what temperament you are, oftentimes by nature, your EQ is a little lower than most because of how you process. I'll give you an example. Turtles and lions' EQ generally are a little lower by nature than a flamingo and chameleon, because they are not people. Mm-hmm. I need y'all to hear that. It doesn't mean that they're bad or evil. It doesn't mean that they don't care. It simply means that they feel differently. So their emotional intelligence oftentimes is a little bit lower, and it makes it difficult for them to minimize their emotion when talking. A lion will absolutely roar, snap at you, and because they just want to get it done. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to think, what does it take for you to grow your emotional intelligence? And now we're starting a series, and we're in a series now on emotional intelligence inside of the MAPS Relationship Academy. If you want to be a part of that, just simply sign up for a free discovery session at www.thecrcoach.com, and we'll be more than happy to get you, because we're going to be on this series for a minute. And we got a book that we're going through. There's a self-assessment that you're taking, and we're literally taking people by the numbers and teaching them how they should be thinking through their emotions. The last thing I'm going to say about this, babe, is that oftentimes people forget that when emotions come in the room and you're making a big decision, you are making a permanent decision based upon, there we go, thanks. You're making a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling.
Right.
That's a
the
problem.
feeling's going to change.
That's a problem.
Because I'm upset right now, but an hour later, my emotions didn't come down.
Yeah.
And now I done said some things I
And you be like,
regret.
oh, snap. Now I got to live with that.
Right.
Some of y'all got married on that premise. I'm just playing. No, I'm just serious. But I'm just playing. Kim, good to see you in Instagram. Guys, listen to me carefully. Critical for you to be able to get your emotions intact in check so it does not cause you to make decisions that you will later regret. Number 7, if you're ready for number 7, we're talking about, put it in the chat if you're ready for number 7. We're talking about the 9 steps toward being able to highly communicate or being highly effective in your communication. One thing I keep reminding people, babe, is that you and I have been perfecting our communication over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't always get it right, but it's these principles that you and I go back to when things start to spiral out of control. And that's why, we can say that we've only had, a half a dozen or so major arguments in all those years, because it's not because we're better than anybody. It's because we choose to use the skills that we've learned in order to navigate the crazy.
Right. And I think that this one, number 7, is key. And I'm not going to read it the way that it says it. But basically being able to yield to an argument. Being willing to step back and not be so pressed to get your point across that you're willing to cross that threshold that now this goes into something ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Being willing to pull back and just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to yield. Let's table this, or agreeing to disagree, whatever it is. But realizing that the relationship is worth more than your point.
Oh, that's good. For those of y'all that just chimed in the IG, we're talking about the 9 steps to highly effective communication. Cherie and I, as relationship coaches, having been married before one another, having been married for now 20 years, we have had to recognize that it was our inability to perfect this skill set called communication that caused the demise of our first marriages. And it's because we have perfected it that I believe, between that and community, are the single reasons, or the 2 reasons probably top for me, that really has spelled why we are still not only together, but we're actually thriving at this stage in our life, as opposed to just maintaining.
Right. And so somebody has to be willing to say, to put on the brakes.
Yeah.
In when things start to get heated, when things start to go there. I know, like for us early on, because you came from a loud, boisterous family.
Loud. Our whole family is loud. Still loud.
Argue.
God bless you.
I did not come from that. And so I was even from my former relationship, I'm not an arguer. I'm not going to argue now. The old me, I'm not going to argue with you. I'll cut you. But I ain't going to argue.
That's that Southeast DC talk.
I'm not going to go back and forth with you.
See, that's crazy.
I ain't going back and forth with you.
Remember on Harlem Nights when your girl went and got the pistol? She wasn't going to argue, but she will shoot you.
Right. I ain't going to argue with you. And so for us early on, Glenn would get amped up and he want to talk about something and he want to keep pressing the issue. And I'm like, oh, Joe, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
When you come and we can just talk about it, that's
yeah.
cool. But I'm not going to go this back and forth. I don't have to debate.
And you would put up boundaries where you would say things like, well, here's the deal. I'm not going to have this conversation now because clearly our emotions are not in check. They're out of control. And I'm going to go and I'm going to do what I got to do. And then maybe we can come back in an hour and have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like it at first. I didn't particularly.
We're gonna talk about it.
We're going to talk about this right now. Right. Walking out after her while she trying to get to work. This is first thing in the morning.
I got to go to work.
She's trying to get to work. I'm following her out the door. Nah, we're going to have this conversation. That is straight flamingo behavior, straight lion behavior. And the turtle has said, listen, I don't want to talk about this right now. The emotions are way too high. We're not going to get any resolution. So what I need you guys to understand, you have to be willing to yield your point of view in the moment so that it doesn't blow up to something that's out of control. And so the last thing I'll say, and we've said this before, is you have to ask yourself, do I want my point or do I want peace?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do I want my point? Or do I want peace? Now, that doesn't mean you don't get to make a point.
Right, no.
But it does mean that you get to strategically lay out when that happens so that it can be received. Let's just be dead real, guys. The whole point that you bother to communicate is that somebody would actually receive what it is that you have to say.
Right. And if you yelling at people, people ain't receiving.
Ain't nobody hearing all of that.
They just hearing you yell.
And so at this particular point, the yelling becomes the issue.
Right.
And now, at this point, you never get the real resolution to your situation. If you're ready for number 8, I got you. But I just want you to get some number 8s going in the chat.
8. And I just want to add this other part to that. When you yell at another human being, it's disrespectful. It's demeaning. And people say, don't talk to me, I'm not your child. You shouldn't yell at your children either. Because they're human beings as well. But there's you're attacking their emotional state of mind when you're yelling at a person. And there is irreparable damage that can be done. It's called verbal abuse. When you constantly yell at a person, if you find yourself that you can't have a conversation with a person speaking at a normal tone, that every time you talk to this person, you're talking at them because you're yelling at them. Imagine if your boss on your job addressed you in that manner. You would feel disrespected. You'd feel demeaned. That's the same way that your spouse or your children feel when you talk to them in that manner.
Right.
And so I'm a firm believer it's never acceptable to yell at a person. It's never acceptable for me to talk down to a person in that manner because I'm not going to disrespect you in that manner. There's nothing that you do. There's nothing that's going on between us that's going to cause me to treat you lesser than.
Correct.
And that's what you do when you're yelling at a person. So when you're in an argument and you feel your tone starting to elevate, back yourself up and say, hold up, this is not what I'm not trying to cut this person out. Now, if that's your intention,
then obviously your intent is not to communicate.
But know that that's your intention.
Right. That makes a whole lot of sense, babe, because I think that what people don't understand is that when I get to the place to where now I'm yelling and screaming, it has ceased to become about you and it's about me and how I'm feeling.
Right. Like when I get road rage and I'm yelling at the people in the car, they can't hear me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to demean them even though they can't hear me.
And so because I'm riding in the car, I'm saying, hey, can you chill? Because at this particular point, not only can they not hear you,
right,
but I feel horrible.
Brunt of it, right.
And I'm catching the brunt of what they done did. And so at this particular point, I feel like I'm in trouble. And I'm minding my business. So I'm going to need you to kind of figure out how to deal with your emotions rather than doing that. And what we realize is, babe, is that what that's telling you is that your emotions need to have a place to vent and to be able to get it out. Here's what I'm going to tell you. That is not the time to find yourself trying to connect to another person. Right. That's not where you do that.
Right. And if you think about I'm going to use the road rage situation as an example. If I stop my car next to this person that they cut me off, I roll down my window and I yell at them, I'm saying I want to fight. That's what they're hearing, but they don't care. It don't matter what I'm saying.
100%.
Me posturing that way is posturing to fight.
100%.
And so unless your goal in your relationship is that you're trying to go to blows with this person, why are you yelling at them? Right.
Now, if you're going to, where I'm from, if you're going to fight, just shut up and fight already.
All right, we ain't got to say nothing.
We ain't got that. We ain't got to have a conversation about it. I'm
just steal you.
You get what I'm saying? So, but here's what we know. That ain't the point.
That ain't what you're trying to
That's
do
not really what right.
Now with the people that you love, you shouldn't be.
No, you're not trying to
go to blows.
That's why you're talking, because you don't want to fight. But what I'm telling you is that you gotta be at a place, or you gotta get to a place, and this takes work, guys. This takes work. This takes effort. This takes growth. That's one of the reasons why in our MAPS Relationship Academy, we focus heavily on helping people build the skill sets and the tools to be able to do this. Number 8, we're getting ready to go to number 8. For those of you guys who have already put a number 8 in the chat, appreciate it. We're going to lighten it up a little bit. But when you are trying to effectively communicate, one of the things I want you guys to think about is, how often do you incorporate humor and playfulness when trying to communicate? Meaning, and that's number 8. Humor and playfulness usually can help.
Right.
So Cherie has this quirky way of being playful with me. And it's kind of weird because she wasn't always this way. The older she gets, the more self-aware she becomes, the more comfortable she becomes in her own skin to be her, which I absolutely encourage, love it. I'm finding that there's this little goofy person in there that I never really knew like that. And it's really funny. So she will be trying to communicate to me, but she'll do it through playfulness, and I'm learning she's actually saying, I want to do something, or I want to go here. I think that what we do sometimes is we really approach relationships way, 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 way too serious. Mm-hmm. And we don't allow ourselves to just freaking breathe, y'all. And I think that's really where I'm going with this. It's allow the human in the situation to come out, mm-hmm. so that you can connect to another human and therefore get more of what you want. And I don't mean that you're speaking truth in jest. I don't mean that you are being sarcastic and you're being playful and you're trying to I'm not saying that. I'm saying lighten up.
Lighten the mood.
Sometimes if you would just introduce a little humor into the conversation, it'll cause somebody to let their guard down. Sometimes if you just decide, and you know what, I'm just going to be goofy and playful, it'll cause this person to recognize I'm not your enemy right here.
Right.
I'm actually your friend, and I want to communicate.
Right. Now, the key to this is timing. Because if you're in the middle of a serious conversation, don't just break out with a joke. It's
like timing is really off.
What the heck are you talking about? But it's being able to be vulnerable. There's a level of vulnerability that you have with your partner or with your children when you're funny, when you're being playful. Yeah. It lets them see that you're human, that you're not this always together person. And for my perfectionists, for my fellow turtles, my fellow chameleons, we are not right all the time.
Nope.
Our way is not always the only way.
Nope.
And so loosen up.
Right.
Just do this with me. Just do it with me. Just loosen up. Let go. It ain't that serious.
Right.
They put the dishes in the wrong cabinet. You're not going to die.
Not today.
You're not going to die. They folded the sheets wrong. You're not going to die.
So you all amped up and all rigid.
Didn't I tell y'all to
put this up? I told you. See, y'all don't appreciate nothing I do.
I do everything.
I'm out here working. I got 4 jobs.
It ain't that
y'all see, you can't even get 4 jobs. I got 4, 5, and y'all don't appreciate it. Ain't lighten up.
But Mom, I did the dish, but you didn't do them right.
Right. You get what I'm saying? Lighten up.
Lighten up.
Because here's what you will find.
Life is too short.
Life is too short.
A lot of the things that we put a lot of energy on are not.
100%. And B, you will find that people will reciprocate so much easier if you would just lighten up. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to encourage you. So number 8 is humor, playfulness. That usually helps. And the last thing I want you guys to do is focus on, and we talked a little bit about this throughout, and I want to kind of hone in on a little bit, Understand
I'm
this, that
sorry.
communicating is more than just talking. Number 9, communicating is more than just talking. Number 9, communicating is more than just talking. Why were you laughing?
I'm sorry.
Because that was your timing
I'm
was just
sorry.
really y'all see that?
I'm
Like
sorry.
she read something and then just quirky left.
No more wire hangers.
Right.
I'm sorry.
but the
Sorry.
but the good news is that it was able to make a point.
Right.
Sometimes I get all rigid. Look, I ain't got but 39%, 32% chameleon, 39% turtle, right? But there are times I'm operating at 100% of that. And so Cherie will just let something goofy loose.
My little bit of
Her little bit of flamingo.
flamingo
She got about 30% flamingo. And she'll let it out, and that's where her funny comes from. But it helps to move the conversation. So why am I saying this, guys? Is that to communicate better and more effectively in your relationship, you don't have to only talk.
Right.
There are other ways to communicate through your actions. And nowadays, I want to talk a little bit about this, but I use social media. I will use texting in a heartbeat to communicate what it is that I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. Last night, and we talked about that we would share this, you were feeling really overwhelmed, and you were trying to communicate that to me, and I wasn't hearing it that way. Mm-hmm. I was hearing it as a quick fix. Why don't you just go downstairs, get on the treadmill, do whatever you got to do, burn up some endorphins, and then you won't feel overwhelmed. That was a very non-feeling way of communicating to you something that was really serious for you at that moment. And so we couldn't figure out what we wanted to do for date night, so we wound up both going to get food and coming back. And when I left, I felt like things were not cool. Mm-hmm. Left to go get the food. And so I text you, what do you want? I engaged you, sitting right there in the car before I pulled off. I engaged you, which left the conversation open. Mm-hmm. So much so I noticed that when I got back, we were able to have a really healthy, non-emotional charged conversation about where you really were. Mm-hmm. And then I had an aha moment. Right. I did not connect those dots that way. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I kept the conversation going by way of text so that we could communicate.
Right. And I think that communication is more than just talking. Than just actually sitting down and have a conversation. Like he said, it's through your actions. You can utilize social media. You can utilize texting. One thing I do want to say, do not, especially this is for my singles and dating people, do not limit your conversations to just texting and DMing a person. Yep. You need to talk to the person.
You need to have real
physical conversation.
Yes.
Even, with friends. I mean, like now one thing that it does give you the opportunity. So if somebody comes across my mind, I'm at work, I can shoot them a text real quick. Hey, just thinking about you. How you doing?
And that's all we're talking about.
And that may spark that day because you never know what you're doing. So utilize those things for things like that. But don't get so trapped in this that this is the only way that you're communicating. You have to be able to have face-to-face conversations, voice conversations with people. I am still a proponent of written conversations with people and not talking about emails. I will, get a blank card and write out my thoughts, how I'm feeling about a person in a heartbeat and send that to a person because I believe in written communication. But those are all forms of communications where I'm able to share my heart with a person. And that's one thing I know, like early on in our relationship, I used to give you like these 4 or 5 page letters.
Oh, Lord, I remember those.
I'd be feeling something, going through something emotionally, and I would just write it out because it was easier for me to communicate that way in writing because I'm a writer. Yep. And so it was easier for me to write it out, and I would write him this long letter and be like, here, read this when you get a chance. And he'd be like, what is this?
Right. But one of the things I loved about that is that when you write like that, it takes emotions out of the room. Mm-hmm. And now I don't have to feel some type of way because you got all these emotions emoting in front of me. And now I'm having to navigate that and what you're saying. It isolates it a lot better when you can just put your thoughts on paper and you can say exactly what it is that you feel. Not that the written word doesn't carry emotions, but I don't see the body language there, and I'm able to connect to it. So guys, that's really it. We're talking about 9 things that you can use, and we've been on this series the last couple of weeks dealing with issues, I think, that will derail any relationship, particularly if you're single, if you're dating, if you are engaged and you're moving towards marriage. You're going to have to figure this stuff out. And at the end of the day, here's what I promise you. If you don't work on these things, they will sabotage your relationship. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And I think that unfortunately, most people, Cherie, that we get to coach are coming to us on the back end of something gone so wrong
for so long
that we have said now, hey, how is it that you've gone this long? And it makes it so much more difficult to help you fix it.
Right, and then a lot of those people, defense, they just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't had a healthy example of
100%
how marriage is supposed to be, how a relationship is supposed to be, and unfortunately, the reality is in most cases, we see people's relationship from the outside.
Yeah.
We're not seeing the ins and outs. We're not seeing what's really going on inside
100%.
a relationship. You see them on the outside, and they're this lovely couple, and everything looks fine, but you don't get to peer inside of what's really going on in their relationship. And so within the MAPS community, Marriages and Parenting Successfully, in our Relationship Academy, we allow people to peer inside. Not only our relationships, but the relationships with others in the groups. They open themselves up and let people
it's a safe place where
what's
people
going on, the issues that they really deal with. And we work together to be able to help people figure out how to deal with those situations. We share, when we have our challenges. Like I said, we're not perfect at all. We have our challenges, but we've learned how to work through whatever comes our way. We've learned how to communicate through it, how to deal with it, how to come up with a solution, because at the end of the day, we've decided that this is it. We've made this commitment to one another, and we're going to stand by that commitment, and that we're going to make it through whatever comes our way. And so, divorce is not an option.
Not an option.
So
it's till death do us part up in here.
And ain't nobody killing nobody.
Somebody got to die, and ain't nobody going to jail. So that means we gotta work it out.
Right. So we share, what we've been through. For those of you that are single, dating, or engaged, I strongly want to invite you to come attend us here in Norfolk, Virginia, October 11th and 12th. You can go to the website, www.thecrcoach, to get more information. I'm also going to post a registration link.
For those of you guys who are on IG, if you want to do me a favor, put in the chat www.thecrcoach.com. Nikkei, I don't know if any of the MAPS folks are on that particular platform, but if you can pop that in the comment section so that people can get a hyperlink, it's www.thecr, it stands for Constant Relationship Coach.com, and that way you can get more information about this upcoming event that we're doing November 11th and 12th called The Road to I Do. Right,
and we've extended the early bird rate until September 30th. So please register if you are going to attend. It's only limited spaces, and once we reach that number, we are going to close this event because we want it to be an intimate event. We're not going to have 100 people in this event because we want to really be able to do some hands-on activities with people. So if you're interested, please go ahead and register. Once again, it's here in Norfolk, Virginia, October 11th and 12th. That Friday, October 11th, is simply going to be a meet and greet. You'll come in town. We'll all hook up down Norfolk Waterside, just hang out, kind of get to know each other, just spend some time together. And then on Saturday, we're going to really grind. We're going to talk about some things that you need to do before you say I do.
100%.
Talk about topics you need to talk about, help you guys figure out how to have some of these conversations that are difficult, and help hopefully to prepare you guys for when that time does come. You'll know how to move forward and how to avoid some of the pitfalls that many couples face in marriage.
Guys, it's been an hour. This is the longest we've been on with any Breakfast with the Brookses. We're going to get it ready to run. We've got a ton of things going on. Thank you so much, Dana. Dana said folks are alive because of you and Glenn, you and Cherie. Thank you so much. Listen, I get it. For those of you guys who are on IG, thank you so much for joining us. Our time is going to run out with you guys in about 30 seconds. I know that they give you a certain amount of time on IG. For those of you guys here on YouTube, again, at the end of the day, guys, here's what I know. You cannot get to any place of significance by yourself. We all need some help. Y'all be good, and we'll talk soon.
Have a great Saturday.